Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the career coaching podcast. Now, you may be wondering why we're going to talk about faith on a career podcast. But the truth is, confidence doesn't come just from our careers. It comes from feeling accepted for who we are. For many LGBTQ plus people, faith and religion have been a source of pain, rejection, or even fear. Others have quietly walked away from church believing there simply wasn't a place for them. Today's conversation isn't about convincing anyone what to believe. It's about exploring what authentic welcome actually looks like and highlighting communities where LGBTQ plus people don't have to choose between their faith and their identity. Joining me today are two incredible guests. Reverend Patz is the pastor of St. Paul's United Church of Christ in Elgin, Illinois, where creating an authentic, affirming community is more than a slogan. It's a commitment. We're also joined by returning guest, Maya Garner, a seasoned sales and training professional whose own experiences searching for affirming faith communities have inspired her passion for helping others know they aren't alone. Together, we're talking about inclusion, scripture, healing, belonging, and what it truly means to create spaces where everyone is welcome. So Liz and Maya, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Empowered and Out.
Thank you so much. This
Yes,
is my
thank you.
joy and pleasure to be here.
Awesome. All right. So something we're doing different that we didn't do when Maya and I had our first conversation, I have what I call the energy check-in. And I have all of my guests let me know where they are in their energy today. So on a scale from 1 to 10, we'll start with you, Liz. You're new. So how is your energy today and what's contributing to that number?
I am probably physically at a 6. It's the weather. I'm just hugely affected by weather, and it is a really crummy day, but it was also swelteringly humid this morning. And our just the layout of our building, I'm in the church right now, but our offices are in another building. So like going back and forth today is just kind of yeah, so physically I'm feeling, I just think the weather is making me feel a little bleh. But this I knew was happening, so very much excited for it.
Awesome. Okay, Maya, how about you?
Would have to agree. Physically, I'm just like, you got to be kidding when I walked outside this morning. It's like I moved away from this up to Illinois from Florida. But yeah, I mean, energy wise though, yes, I'm excited to be here and to do this again. So I definitely put myself up there energy wise at a good 8 or 9.
Awesome. And I would say the funny thing is, Maya, you and I were actually chatting about this before we started the record, is that it's very humid here in Colorado today. Like it's like over like around 40%. That is not the norm here. It's typically in the teens or even lower, but we do have rain in the forecast. So that is what's bringing the gross yuckiness that I got away from as well to deal with today. But honestly, I'm at like, I'd say 8.5, 9 for this because I'm excited for our conversation today. So, all right. Well, let's start with your stories. Everyone's relationship with faith is different. So Liz, what first led you to ministry and what eventually led you to become so passionate about LGBTQ plus inclusion?
So I grew up with a practicing Catholic father and a Pentecostal Assemblies of God mother, which might sound like a thunder and lightning, but they very much appreciated each other and made room for each other. And at an early age, my mom took me to the denomination United Church of Christ, which is a progressive mainline denomination. So as far as progressive theology, that's really all I've ever known, with a deep respect that just like I was raised in a Catholic Assemblies of God, UCC church, someone else was raised faithfully and lovingly in a Jewish home. Someone else was raised faithfully and lovingly in an atheist home. So I have a appreciation for when they say, you know, one light, many paths. So I raised in the church and very involved and just was encouraged and felt a call within me. I've been compelled by the teachings of Jesus. Again, not to say that other teachings aren't valuable, but for me in my life, I was compelled by that and felt a call and followed it. So
Awesome. I like that. All right, Maya, What has your own faith journey looked like? And what made this conversation that we are having now important enough that you wanted to be a part of it?
Okay. So mine has been a little all over the place. I grew up in Bethel AME, and which is, predominantly African American. And I mean, born and raised up through that all the way until college. So that was definitely where I learned everything, but also to, where as I got older, I got to see different things. Cause, growing up in high school, you have friends that go to different churches. So you kind of get to learn different things and figure out your own way. What brings us to this conversation today is just as I learn and, speak to people, me, I like to talk to everybody. And I just trying to find out why, I know a lot of the reasons why the LGBTQ plus community, has left the church, or some of them never even gone to church. I know the reasons why, because I've been affected by a lot of those reasons too, but just trying to find out more. And I don't know, just something inside me. It's like, you know what, this is a conversation we need to have. We need to recognize, what's going on. And obviously a lot of things politically going on today and really hurting our community. But, that we do need to put it out there that there are places we can go now. I mean, there's places we could go then, but still the fear, the anger within a lot of people within the community, just not wanting to go. And I think now more than ever, with everything that is going on politically, we need to get that out there that there are places for us to go, that the doors are open and welcoming and people are standing by us.
I like that a lot. And it's interesting because even my own journey, like I grew up in the church. Like I grew up in an Episcopal church. The funny thing for me is we went to one church where my family still goes to this day. But at one point when I never sang in that church. I actually sang in a different Episcopal church, which is kind of funny when you think about it. It's like why I didn't sing in that one. But I know you and we all chatted about this in our pre-conversation, is the fact that I got given so much grief because I didn't know the whole steps and how a service runs or what. And it was because I was in choir. But then I had the opportunity I went to a Christian sports camp growing up that I got to experience. It was non-denominational. And I love that. And that actually got me into going to you would have thought that eventually when I actually came out that I would have probably been afraid to go to the university that I was at, but because it was Southern Baptist, and Southern Baptists are not really very fond of the LGBTQ plus community at all. But the funny thing is I met more people who are part of the community there, I wouldn't say necessarily closeted, but hiding, or just because of just the way the school was. And in the end, I've never actually ever had a bad experience because even when I moved here to Colorado, the church that I attended for the first, my gosh, probably 5-6 years was a, welcoming and affirming church. The senior minister was an openly gay man, and and most of the church council was part of the community. So it was very welcoming, and it felt great to be a part of that church. But I know, as we're going to get into, there are definitely people who have not had a good journey. And unfortunately, yeah, some have turned completely away from religion, enough that some even went through, and I had a guest on, earlier this year who even went through conversion therapy and came out of it, is still gay, but it really pushed them away from religion because they had actually gone to another religious university, and it really, really pushed them away from religion, which is unfortunate because I think that because of the bad experience at the university had nothing to do with religion. It had to do with that specific university, at least in my opinion. But I'm so humbled that I got to hear and blessed that I got to hear that story, because it was funny to know that we could both be at Christian universities and have completely different experiences. And I don't think there was any conversion therapy happening where I was. I definitely didn't hear about it, but they definitely did where he went. So anyway, yeah. So many LGBTQ plus people, they walk through a church carrying fear before they ever walk through the doors. whether it's past trauma, rejection, or simply not knowing what they'll encounter. What do you think is going through someone's mind as they approach an affirming church for the very first time?
Well, I can speak to that if that's okay, Maya.
Of course. Yeah.
Just speaking from conversations I've had, and I when we have the church has been part of the Pride Parade and Festival in town here, and I will have really nice conversations with folks, and many times the question is, you're this is so nice. We love your tent. Thank you for the craft for my child. But really, is it really safe for me and my family here? And I totally appreciate that question, and I get it. So I understand just because there's a rainbow on the sign or, something indicating I have a deep awareness, and the congregation tries also to have that awareness that we don't take for granted that just because we say welcome, like we need to be sensitive and aware and clear in our messaging.
What do you think, Maya?
What's going through their minds? That exact question, am I really going to be welcome? Because that's gone through my mind. The other things too that go through my mind a lot of the open and affirming churches there's from a diversity standpoint, a lot of them are not very diverse. So that's the other piece of the puzzle for me, where it's like, okay, going in, all right, am I welcome for who I am? Also, am I welcome for the color of my skin? So that one, and then, are they going to stare at me, or, am I allowed to hold my partner's hand? Just feeling comfortable. There's a lot of anxiety around it. There really is, because of so many things. I mean, personally, that I've gone through, and I imagine others as well. But there's a little bit of hesitation. That's why, again, I'm thankful for technology where you can actually watch, a service, because a lot of churches now, because of COVID, broadcast on social media. So, but there's a lot of anxiety around it.
Mm-hmm. So, Liz, how do you help someone feel safe before they even attend?
So in our denomination, if you are officially open and affirming, it is an official term. There's a process to go through, and it's an important process. The congregation goes through at least a year of study and discussion and opportunities to ask questions and to equip one another with the language of, all right, when we do say open and affirming, and people have questions about, well, the Bible says this, what are you going to say? How are you going to handle that? It's a prayerful discernment time. And then a vote is taken. Like literally the vote is taken. And that might sound like, oh, that doesn't sound very spiritual. Well, spiritual can, like you're just saying, you want to be clear that yes, this is something that our congregation believes is important, and we will put it to a vote. And in our statement specifically, it says that we will commit to the ongoing work of being an open and affirming. So there's like this understanding of allyship, of education, but it's a commitment to that. Now, and I can only speak for our congregation, but I think it is important that people know that designation, and throughout the mainline Protestant churches, like the Presbyterian churches, I believe it's called, you are a more light church. In the United Church of Christ, it's open and affirming. But that is the best thing we can do, is be intentional. Yes, we have chosen this, and then do the work. Continue to commit to education and relationship building, and reaching out to the local Elgin Pride, and how can we help? What do you need? Yeah, it's a relationship, right? It's an ongoing process and relationship. And I feel that's so important, because I do want people to know and feel like this truly is a safe place, because I do understand that not all, how are you ever going to really know? I totally appreciate that for someone in the LGBTQ plus community, they are taking a risk. They're risking their heart to come into this place, and we need to do our best to just be authentic in welcome.
For sure. And I love what you said, Maya, that you were actually able to even check out, UCC because of going online and being able to watch the service, or 2 or 3 or whatever. And I think that is, as much as COVID was awful, and what we had to go through, there definitely were some pluses that came out of it. And one of them is that availability to watch a service. So you can see, okay, they're really speaking to me. Okay, let's see what we can do to maybe, attend and go from there. And I mean, we've done it. My partner and I, we've looked at churches online. We've watched this, the services. And sometimes we watch the service just because we couldn't even get away that Sunday to be able to, things were just going on. And so we could be able to watch the service later. I mean, I know for a fact, a lot of times, my partner listens to this. A lot of times he'll listen to other churches' services, like right now on Mondays, and like kind of listening to the sermons, listening to the music, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we both were, and I am still in a choir. So I love music. So I love being, especially, there are definitely certain hymns, certain pieces that have, been in the church that I love to hear again and again. And I think when you have that comfort that okay, well, if this is happening, this will be good for me, hopefully. So, and I'll ask you guys both this and see how each of you answer this question. What would you say to someone who's been away from church for years because they were hurt?
Wow. I'll jump on this one first as it gets darker in here because something's about to blow through here. So might have to go turn on a light here in a minute. My own partner was one of those. So she grew up Catholic. And of course, after she came out to her family, it didn't exactly go over well. And she decided to come back. And when we found a church home when we were still living in Indiana, she's like, I don't know about this. And I said, you know what? 2 words to her, I said, it's okay. And I said, we'll go when you're ready. You tell me when you're ready. And then when we finally decided to go, I just said, just go in and you be who you are. And one thing I always tell her is, I've got you. So, a lot of the times that's just kind of how I was born or how I was raised to be that strong African American woman. And going in, I know there was a lot of anxiety and fear. And I've got you. And just knowing that, I think, is what helped. And that's what I would say to anyone that wants to come back and take that leap of faith. And instead of it just being me, it would hopefully be others too saying, we've got you.
How about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I would say I understand. And I would, if someone has been hurt and wants to be church, I hope that they would know there are churches out there where you can just simply come and belong. There is no expectation for you to feel a certain way. There is no expectation that, oh, well, that has to be healed. No, there are places that can be healing for you. And open and affirming churches are what that means is all are welcome into the full ministry and leadership of the church. Come and find community and be yourself. You don't have to hide. You don't have to hide your hurt even, but just come first to worship. Welcome to worship on a Sunday morning, and let's sing together and we will pray together. And just let it be that first step. That is what I pray. Like if someone has had a bad experience, please don't let that stop you from finding and there is that church community out there that is for you. I would just say be yourself completely. Pull the pastor aside. You could even say something like, "Look, I'm not too sure about this. Maybe we can talk." Or, but yeah, just come and belong. Come and worship. Everything else can fall into place if you feel comfortable. That's the other wonderful thing is church is like anything else. We're so fortunate when Maya and Jessica first came. My church gets a little upset with me because I will say to people, LGBTQ plus people, I am so thankful that you live in a community where you have options. We are one option. We would thank you so much for worshiping with us this morning. It was awesome to know you, but please know you don't have to come here because we're the default. Oh, well, we have to like these people because they're flying a flag. It's wonderful. You have options. Find your people. We are all, we're all Christians following Christ, loving God and loving one another. And it's a blessing to live where we live, and that people just have the option to find the music they like, the activities they like, right? But that is a gift. And I would encourage people just keep seeking, don't give up on that. Don't give up on that.
I love that. And you clearly saw my notes because we were going to go into the open and affirming, and boom, you like hit it right on the head, which is great. But I can actually follow into this, like, so to ask Maya, because you really defined it. So Maya, to you, why do you think the open and affirming, why does it carry so much responsibility when you're going to church?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it carries so much responsibility because it's very strong words. And for myself, going in, it's like, okay, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? That's why it carries so much responsibility. And that's one thing, we have found at St. Paul's at UCC. And because there are a lot of churches out there that would be like, oh, sure, we welcome everyone. Uh-huh. You'll say that out loud and then you find out the truth. No, you don't. You can say that all you want on social media or, in front of people, cameras, whatever it may be. But deep down, no, you don't. And that's where I've been burned, where friends of mine have been burned. It's just, you talk the talk, can you walk the walk? And again, that's why there's so much responsibility with it because, I've seen it where, oh yeah, we welcome everyone. They'll fly their pride flag all through June, take it right back down, go back to their old ways, but in the public eye, yes, we're open and affirming when they're not.
So Liz, and I know we talked about this, you kind of explained a little bit when we had our pre-conversation. So for the audience, what's the process a church goes through to become open and affirming?
So someone in the church, and it's usually leadership, whether there's we call ours a council, a board, will say, you know what, we need to look into this designation. There's a lot of different justice oriented, inclusive oriented designations. Someone will say, I want to look into this, and there is like an official process of resources. A leader will assemble a couple members that's, would you like to be part of this group? And there's an initial vote to say, yes, we want to enter into this discernment process. I know here at St. Paul's, there were about 4 or 5 members who volunteered to meet with small groups of church members. They met at people's homes, they met at restaurants to have Q&As about, what is this process? What does this mean? There was Bible study involved, I believe. And I was here when we had 2 members from another church who had gone through the process to come and talk about their experience. And then the leaders move to vote officially. And one of the important pieces is that throughout the discernment process, a statement is formed. And you put into words what it means for your church that you will be open and affirming. It was really interesting. The woman who put ours together, she did a really nice job. And at first she was a little unsure, but she ended up being the one that said, I want to write this statement. And the statement then is part of the vote that this will officially be our open and affirming statement. And many of the statements that you'll read do say something along the lines of a commitment, an ongoing commitment to this work. And for me, that was a really important part, maybe almost the most important part. Maya, like you just said, all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome. But what does that look like? How are we going to, you use the word responsible, John, and I appreciated that. How are we responsibly going to live into this commitment? So that's been, and then at that time, then it became a budget line. Once the vote was made, it became a budget line as far as like, all right, how, I think it says open and the line is open and affirming. And we actively then look for ways that we can support the community.
Very nice. So going on to what Maya kind of mentioned a little bit. So why isn't displaying a rainbow flag enough?
Anyone can put a flag up in any, you run the risk of having 5 people in the church who absolutely oh, this is so important to us. We have to do this. We have to do that. Well, great. Now, when someone shows up to your church, there's only 5 of you that are on board. The other 55, you have not created a safe environment. You have not been intentional about making sure that someone is safe when they walk in, and safety is important. And like I said, we're human beings, and as pastor, I cannot control everyone, but we can, just to put the flag. Yeah, sure, I could put a flag up, but that does not, you have not done the work. And we talk about covenant a lot in the church, and you need people to say, yes, I support this, and why. And ongoing communication with that. So you can have a couple well-intentioned people, but you're just going to create more harm. And that's obvious, so not what anyone wants to do.
Well, I think, Maya, you made a good point too, is like, well, because a lot of businesses do this, but you put up that rainbow flag during Pride, and then in June, and then July 1st, it's gone. And it's like, okay. I mean, for me personally, I teach my clients, it's like, you need to study their website. You need to learn about how they are, because if you want to be welcomed for who you really authentically are, they need to be accepting, but they need to have that response. Like, they need to be affirming. They need to show that they're going to, especially in the churches, they need to show that you really are welcome. And to take it down or not show it, I mean, coming here, like I mentioned earlier, the church that I went to initially, it kind of shocked me a little bit. I mean, just to see how many people in the congregation, but also as part of the leadership team, were part of the LGBTQ plus community. I thought it was actually pretty awesome, because I'd never seen that in a church before. And it's funny now to look at where I grew up. That Episcopal church has had multiple members of the LGBTQ plus community be on their ministerial team, and it's kind of awesome to see it. And for personally, I think it should always be there, because it's a way to really understand those people in the community, where if you don't have a single person, you're going to probably have to do, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you're probably going to have to do maybe a little bit more like studying and research to make sure that how you speak, just speaking alone, how the language you use is not going to offend someone. Now, the good thing, like I mentioned earlier, you can go watch a lot of times that church, and if they are not saying which is comfortable to you, well, you're probably not going to go in there anyways, even if they say they happen to be open and affirming, but then they never reference anything anywhere in any of their, be it on their website, during a church service, whatever, then it's probably not the place for you to go. But so what should someone look for when trying to determine whether a church is genuinely affirming?
I think that you just explained websites, and that's just really important. I would say too that a church that is open and affirming will have some type of statement, and you won't just see it. It won't be like the designated gay page. It'll be kind of throughout, justice oriented, inclusion, belonging. These will be things that you see throughout their ministries, throughout their activities. At least that has been my experience, that these open and affirming communities, they are justice centered, and you will find that there is a theme to inclusion and belonging. That would be a suggestion.
So Maya, how did you determine when you're looking how a church, if they were genuinely affirming?
So I'm familiar with the site gaychurch.org. So anytime Jessica and I have ever moved, that's usually the first website we hit just to kind of get an idea. If we can't find something there, utilizing other social media, utilizing Google. But then, yes, thoroughly going through the website, seeing if they have any pages on social media or on YouTube, and seeing if they've broadcasted any of their services. And yeah, just really go through the website. And then, yes, of course, looking for the rainbow flag even on the website. We've done that definitely quite a few times. And then we've done, drove by the church, see if there's anything there displayed, before we've actually gone to a service. So just a little bit of research into it. And also too, I've looked at, because usually on every church website, there's some type of bio of the pastor, of the senior pastor. So I've read it, learned more about him or her, and looked at, the staff, and it's like, okay, let's learn a little bit more about them, before we take that plunge and go take a look, at their service. So a little bit of research definitely is put into it.
Nice. I like that. And it's important
Mm-hmm.
because even just, and I've referenced it a few times, but even just watching a church service and the sermon,
Mm-hmm.
just to be like, if you relate, I feel that even more so you should probably go and check out. Because if you related to the message and the way that, let's say, Liz presented, like, you can, okay, maybe I need to hear more. Maybe I should actually have a conversation with Liz and see if she can say, okay, why should we join this church? Why should we why should we come here? Because I feel that when you relate to something that's being spoken time, Sunday after Sunday, month after month, then it's probably a good place for you to go. And you're going to get that welcome, as you said, even just to be able to enjoy the message, to pray, to sing, whatever you might want to do. Churches are, be it affirming, open and affirming or not, churches do have their doors open for a reason, for people to be able to come in and feel welcomed and to be able to pray when they need to pray or whatever, to get the assistance when they need. And I feel that itself, just overall, a higher point is hugely important. But you obviously want to be in a space where you feel comfortable and you don't have that fear.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about something that is clearly something that people have the biggest questions, and that's on scripture. We know that many LGBTQ plus people have heard certain verses quoted at them without context, like way too much. How do you approach these conversations without turning them into debates? I'll go with you, Liz, on this.
The Bible says a lot of things. There's a lot in there. We call it holy word, holy wisdom. And so there are, I believe, if it is of God, it is life-giving. And so yes, you can choose to focus on passages, but ultimately, in the beginning, we were created very good. Our originalness is goodness. Jesus comes to liberate, to heal, to bring life and hope, to connect people who have been marginalized and oppressed. Though those passages are all over the gospel, all over the Bible. And so if it is life-giving, if it is seeking justice, if it is healing, it's of God. And, we had talked about this before, that I am ready and welcome to have, like you said, even, debates, right? In a way that is constructive, right? Like I can have those conversations, but affirming means affirming your sexuality is not a sin. Sexuality is of God. It is of who we are. Same gender loving, gender fluidity there is no sin there. An affirming congregation, an affirming church affirms who you are and welcomes you and wants fullness and wellness for you in the name of Jesus. I mean, that's what it is. And I, like I said, I'm happy to have that conversation, but when I was invited, to this conversation, I just thought I really want people to know there are thousands of churches out there that believe and preach and live this. So just please know that is a truth and a reality, as well as whatever else is going to be out there. That too is a truth and a reality.
So let's go a little bit deeper. Can you explain why historical context matters when reading scripture?
Sure. I mean, culture is culture. I mean, culture is we shape and live according to rules that we've made up, systems that we are part of. And scripture text, again, holy word, holy wisdom. It is important to remember that all of these illustrations and illuminations of God and the divine were written in certain periods and times where systems are in place. And, we are St. Paul's, and Paul is a writer in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, and Paul's own messages get all crisscrossed depending on which community he's speaking to. What is the purpose of his message? But it's Paul who says There is no longer Jew or Greek, man or woman. We are all one in Christ Jesus. So you could pick and choose, what you want, but we have to understand that we are all part of a culture, and we have patriarchy, we have capitalism, whatever system we're living in. We must know that the voices and authors in power are the ones that shaped how we understand things. And that is constantly changing, constantly evolving. But there are those wisdom truths throughout. If it's of God, it is life-giving.
I love that. And I believe, Maya, you mentioned this when we had this our pre-conversation, that the word homosexuality was added in modern translations. And so I'll ask you this, Maya, first, and of course, obviously, Liz, you can answer this. Why is it important for people to understand that? Because it obviously was not in the original text when it was written.
Well, if people understood it, then they would stop throwing it at us, in my opinion. It's just like they would stop trying to use those statements, those scriptures against us to point out that we are sinning and that we are wrong and God did not make us this way. It's amazing how not just this, but so many other things today, again, they just don't understand, and it's used in the wrong context and just causes so much drama that does not need to be caused. So that's why it's like if they just read it and truly understood it, and yes, also realized it was not, in the Old Testament, it again, but there's a lot of things where people are just very uneducated, or they want to know and they're scared to know, or they just flat out don't want to know at all because they just don't want to own that that's the truth, and they want to stay with what they were taught.
I would add that there are a lot of theologians and pastors much smarter than I am that could speak to this, but I will say exactly what Maya was referencing. There was a mistranslation in 1946. There is a wonderful documentary put out about this, and when homosexuality is inserted into the translation, like Maya said, all of a sudden the word gets weaponized. The word of God. No, it's a translation. Like every Bible we ever read is a translation. Mm-hmm. But homosexuality, the idea of same gender loving couples, relationships, marriages, that concept isn't even in the Bible. Like there is nothing that speaks against loving relationships. So a lot of harm. An excellent documentary that maybe we can link somehow.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I think that people really kind of need to understand. And from my conversations with those who have actually, like yourself, who've gone to seminary, who understand, you read this history of these verses and these books of the Bible, and you're like, so there isn't anything in there. And yet, as we know, one of the greatest passages that is thrown at us all the time is in Leviticus. And it's hilarious because it isn't attacking. It's not saying anything about the LGBTQ plus community at all. And again, I think I mentioned this even, and I know, Liz, I'm sure you agree, like these were written at specific times for these people in these areas. This wasn't written for 2026. This wasn't written. We happen to have these great words of God and Jesus that we get to share today and read today. But perfect example is Paul, when he was preaching, he wasn't preaching to Elgin, Illinois. He wasn't preaching to Aurora, Colorado. He was preaching to wherever he was at the time to share this message, to get that across. And it's great that we have these, it's great that we have the Bible, but it's funny that people are so lacking education in what the verses, the chapters, the books, what they really are meaning. And it's kind of unfortunate, but I think that it'd be really kind of, eye-opening, especially for our listeners and viewers to see that and hear, because they'd be like, oh, okay. Because I think that's where I had to do the same thing, even with my own mother. When I came out, I said, hold up. Where are you getting your information from? Because that's not correct. Jesus loved everyone. He was there. He wasn't hanging out with the elders in the church. He would be hanging out with the LGBTQ plus community. He hung out with the lepers. He hung out with everyone who was a marginalized community. he didn't hang out with those that thought they were all high and mighty. Because why? Like there's, and I think it's, I mean, just to, toot my little horn on my, this podcast, I purposely bring everyone in our community that I can on here to share the messages, because the messages need to be heard, especially what we're talking about today, because I feel that it's very important to know that you are welcome. You can go into a church and find it. And I love that there's a website where you can go and find a gay church. That's awesome. I never even knew that. And I think that's so awesome. And I know listeners, and we're going to definitely share that in the show notes, because I feel it's very important for the audience to be able to, if they're questioning, or they, where they could go next, or potentially go in general, to go to that website to check out these churches in their area, or one that might be closer, or even if it's not close, like we've referenced multiple times, to be able to go online and watch a sermon and watch the service in general, because then you can get a good idea. So yeah, I'll get off my little soapbox. Okay, so one of my favorite parts that we had a conversation on was talking about belonging, not just being tolerated, but truly belonging. What does authentic welcome actually look like inside a healthy church community?
People are so funny. Like, we're just so weird, because it's an interesting question. And I can just speak to St. Paul's, because there are chemists, like, I'm a former teacher, and you put a bunch of personalities together and you get a chemistry. So there's going to be a lot of different, I know at St. Paul's, we tend to be very welcoming and happy to see you when you walk in. But I would say that, yeah, I don't, it makes a difference too. We're a smaller congregation, we have 80, 90 people on a Sunday morning, but so that matters. And we have a smaller building. So when you walk through the doors, we know visitors here. Hello. But I think that does count for something. There is a genuine good morning. Hello. Nice to see you. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts. I have had people email me from the LGBTQ plus community and ask that question. Like, are we, what is going to happen on a Sunday morning? Can you explain that for me, for my child? And I usually do make some type of joke, like, you may be smothered with people coming up to you wanting to shake your hand and say hello. But I think that does count for something. People,
well, I think it feels good. It's genuine, like, to be welcomed, like, right away. I mean, you're lying if you don't feel this. It's going to feel good. Like, because just someone say hello, good morning, how are you welcome here, I don't know. To me, that kind of can almost even bring, like, maybe even a little tear in your eye, to sit there and go, okay, they're actually genuine. They're actually wanting to know, good morning. Because there are people who just say, oh, good morning, and they don't, how are you? And they don't really care. They're just saying it to say it. But I think I can tell, especially in a church, that when you feel that, when you definitely feel that genuineness when you've been welcomed. So how does someone know that they found the right faith community?
I could add something real quick to that. For me personally, you just, like, for me, I guess when you're leaving that service, leaving church for that first time, you get that feeling of, yeah, we're coming back next Sunday. It's just, you have that feeling when you leave. It's like, you know what, I enjoyed that and I want to come back again. That's how you kind of know, you know what, this might be a good fit for me. I feel like, I felt welcomed. It was good. I felt the message. And then you come back again. And then that feeling just kind of gets stronger and stronger.
That's awesome. And I agree. I 100% agree. So, Liz, what does inclusion look like beyond Sunday morning?
Going back to that statement and the intentionality of it, our statement says, all people are welcome into the full life and ministry of the church. That means leadership. That means serving together. So that it's not just a Sunday morning, the flag doesn't get brought, the rainbow flag doesn't get brought down after church. There is a sense of, you are welcome into the full life of the church. Come and be part. Lead, be on council, be part of the choir, scripture read, usher, last minute. Thank you very much, Maya. But yeah, it really does mean like come and be Christian community together, right? Like that's my hope and prayer for every person that walks through our door. I am so excited for them to meet this community because I know they will be loved and I hope that they will grow and thrive in their faith. Like this will be a place to plant roots, to be yourself, to connect, yeah, to like meet God, know God in just different ways, but it's a you said that word belonging. It really is. It's a belonging into the full life of the church. I in the mornings when I'll talk about on Sunday morning when we'll do welcome and announcements, and I don't remember. I did not make this phrase up. It was another open and affirming church, but I'll start the announcements by saying our life together is rich. Our life together is full, and in being inclusive means you are welcome to this life.
I love that. And what I like is that, I mean, okay, when I was a kid, I was like kind of thrown into choir because I love to sing. And so that's where I jumped in right away. But as an adult, okay, we did jump into like choir right away because my partner was in the choir. And so I did that when I moved here. But then I got involved in doing Bible study. And then I helped out with other, like when choir was on a break, I would actually go sit back and I would work on the soundboard and actually help with the sound for the church. There's different things that have been a part of. I at one point was even the wedding coordinator for the church. So I helped like set up weddings and do all of that craziness. Kudos to those that do it. Bless you, because it's a whole job on its own. But I loved it. The funny thing is I loved it. And honestly, I have to say the most fun weddings I ever did were actually the same-sex weddings. They were actually the most fun weddings. Sorry, straight couples, but those were actually the most fun. We had some crazy music played. It was just they were just fun weddings. And I'm not saying that there are, I don't know. They were just so much fun. And I felt very blessed to be able to watch this especially when we had one of the weddings that literally packed the church. It filled every single space in the pew. And I'm like,
Wow.
we can't even do this on a Sunday morning in our church. And yet we can get a wedding that is filling hundreds of people. I said, that is incredible. Like over 200 people were in those pews. It was mind blowing to see a church that full for a wedding. And especially a church the church that we had gone to is right across from the state capitol in Denver. So to see that you can be right across from the Capitol and then being able to share these couples to be able to share their love in a space where they were welcomed is incredibly awesome. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It was just awesome. It just made me feel good to be a part of the community. And even at that time, being a part of that church, that we could do that, because going back, 10, 15, 20 years, that wasn't happening when I was growing up. So, all right, Maya, you talked about this, which I thought was really awesome in our pre-conversation. People in smaller towns or in places with very few affirming churches often feel like they have no options. What hope would you give someone who feels isolated and believes they'll never find a welcoming faith community?
I would tell them not to give up, because I didn't. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, not one affirming church whatsoever. I'd say probably the closest one was an hour away. So I just don't give up. And, I made that drive, that hour drive. I made that hour drive a lot just to find more people in the LGBTQ plus community, because again, small town in central Indiana, and I'm surrounded by, unfortunately, a lot of bigotry, and definitely, had to play the game for a little bit until I, was out on my own and moved away. But just keep looking and know that, with today's technology, I mean, you'll be able to find it, versus 20 years ago. It was very rough. You didn't speak of, let's just say I didn't talk about who I was out loud very often. But today, there are so many resources. If you can't make that long drive to that church or to that group, whatever you're trying to attend, again, technology is your friend. Utilize it. Do stuff via Zoom, watch the broadcast, connect via social media. And you never know, you will find, hey, you've got a person or more 10, 15 minutes away from you. And then now you can start your own little group and start your own little Bible study. And then eventually take trips together to that church that might be an hour away. So there's just a lot of resources today that definitely weren't there when I was growing up.
Well, they weren't even really available. I mean, definitely not even probably even 10 years ago. I
Yeah,
mean,
all
I
true.
would say as we have referenced it many times, thanks to COVID is where a lot of churches went online. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's where we started putting out, the church I was at the time, that's where we started putting out online services. And we had been talking about it for way before the pandemic. And it just happened. Okay, boom, here we go. Let's do
Mhm.
this and get this on. And so, good segue is question I had was, and this, Liz, you can answer this as well. How has online worship changed access for LGBTQ plus people?
So you mentioned the pandemic we did not even have internet at the church before the pandemic. Like we like not because we didn't want it. It didn't come like we didn't have it.
Yeah.
And then after the pandemic, things like all of a sudden things started T-Mobile, home access. And so now we do have it. And I would say that, it depends on the church. We will broadcast live and then make it available. You make me think that we could be doing more with building a community through that. But I think as far as like testing, doing some visits online, I think it is very helpful and useful. And I agree with you that, yeah, hopefully everyone's putting their best foot forward on a Sunday morning online. We do the best with what we have, but I think that the welcome and the authenticity is going to come through, one way or the other. But there are other churches who are open and affirming churches who are being intentional and active with creating community. So to Maya's point, I would tell people, please don't give up. Please look, because your people are out there. Your church people, I promise you, they are out there.
I love that. And you actually answered you actually referenced it, and Maya, you did as well, about the community, like creating that community to be able to find when you find a church home, and to be able to, like you said, if it's a distance away, to find those people, to travel then as a group, to go to the church together, because you now have found a place to go, and now you're creating that small little community. And then who knows, those people can branch out and get more people, and then you can bring even more people into that church home. And I feel very fortunate. I mean, goodness, living in a big city, there are churches, oh my goodness, there are churches everywhere. They're everywhere, but not necessarily opening and affirming churches. But that's why, and we'll put this obviously in the notes, about where you can reference and where you can go and search, because it's very, very important. Obviously there's still work to do, looking ahead. I'll ask you to Liz for this, I'll ask you this first. Where do you see hope for the future when it comes to LGBTQ plus inclusion in faith communities?
I think that, like you said, I think no, regardless of size, communities are out there and we're reaching out to each other. We are not through community resources, community groups. There is more and more. I think the younger generations are able to express themselves in a way. At our church, we have a lot of older people that have family and friends in the LGBTQ plus community, and they are seeking to be allies and I just see more and more space for people who want to learn and like really do like, I want to be an ally. Where do I begin? I see those resources growing too. And I'm hopeful about that. I'm the churches themselves are investing in resources. So it's not just, oh, what does your pastor think? I rely on my denomination's resources, and then my denomination partners with others. And that is really hopeful, because this is not just a one-off, oh, that crazy church flying the flag. No, there is theological grounding and serious scholarship. I mean, this isn't just, I have an opinion. There is a foundation here of thought and theology. Yeah, the whole movement for inclusion, it feels more and more rooted and grounded every day. And as a leader in the church, I find hope in that.
I love that. So Maya, where do you still see that there's work to do?
You sure you want to ask me that one?
Yes, actually, 100%. Yes.
There, just speaking as an African American, there's still a lot of work to do there. And a lot of the African American churches are predominant. And, and I don't, just what I've been to. There could be ones out there, Baptist, AME, they could exist, and hopefully they do. I haven't found them yet, but hopefully, one day I'll see one on the list on gaychurch.org. There's just still a lot to do there. There's still a lot to do around with belonging with our trans community. There's still a lot to do there. So,
for sure.
And then there's a lot trans community, and then with our youth, there are, as far as today's generation, there's a lot to do there too, because there are so many that are just so scared, especially in the trans community, so scared that they don't belong at all. And I guess that's where too I feel that I could help there, and just do what I can. But I have hope for the future. As Pastor Liz said, I've got hope too. It's getting there. It's building.
Wow.
But it's just, and then it's just, if we could all see it as, but there's still so many people that don't feel God did not make you that way. And that's the problem. They don't want to change their perspective on that. And again, that's until we can start changing that, there's still going to be a lot of fear out there, unfortunately. But we're getting there. We're moving in the right direction. I mean, I've seen that list grow, and I imagine there's a lot of churches that are open and affirming that just possibly haven't made it to that list yet on gaychurch.org. So that's the great thing about that. We're definitely moving in the right direction. It's just, unfortunately, feels like we're crawling versus walking. So
very, very true. Okay. So we've been deep, we've been real, and now we're just going to get maybe a little mildly unhinged, but in the best way. It's my favorite time of the show. It's the rapid fire time. So quick answers only, please. If you have to expand, it is fine. I'm not going to cut you off. But okay, you both have to answer this question. So if you could have dinner with any biblical figure, who would it be and why? Besides Jesus, because everyone would pick Jesus. Maya, you first.
Really?
Yeah.
The first one is Jesus, because I'd be like, let's sit down. We have got to chat. Definitely be my first choice. Lordy, I have no idea. Because that would literally be my first one. No, Pastor Liz, take it away. I have to think.
Okay, yeah, what an overwhelming question. But
yes,
I am always drawn, I always have been, to the post-resurrection story of the two on the road to Emmaus in Luke. And while all of the disciples known to us, I would absolutely love to talk to. I would like if I could talk with one of them, because it would be, we know that they know of Jesus. They believe, they are heartbroken. Their world has fallen apart. They know Jesus has died. He's been crucified. And at the end of the story, their eyes are open. All of a sudden the pieces fall together. Oh my gosh, we just encountered Jesus. And then they go to meet all the other disciples, and this amazing conversation starts. But I would love to maybe spend time with them and hear, how did you come to know him? How did you come to believe? Just a different disciple story would be fascinating.
I love that. That would be fascinating. It really would be. All right, Maya.
Okay. I don't know. My brain was just being racked there for a minute. This is going to be a little bit of a different answer, because a lot of my questions would be why. And if I could, I'd sit down with Judas.
You know what? He was in my head. That actually would be a great person to have a conversation with.
It would. I would just be like, dude, literally in that term.
Yeah.
What on earth were you thinking? Just why? Why? What was going through your mind? Take me through how you were feeling to where I could get his true side of the story. before I, again, yell at him and be like, dude.
Very nice. Okay. What's your walk up song every time you enter a room? Think baseball entrance music.
You come up with this.
So, but what, help me here. He's awesome. The British singer who sings Feeling All Right. I'm feeling all right. What's his name? Do you know
I
the
have
song?
no idea. It's kind of coming to me.
From the 60s. I could see him. Joe Cocker. Joe Cocker's Feeling All Right.
Okay.
All right.
My husband he always dares me to make that my entrance music on a Sunday morning.
Okay. I would so watch that. Like, I would be so excited.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Okay. What about you, Maya?
I would have like a playlist. I mean, come on now. There's just way too many songs, Like one of my favorites that I play a lot in the morning and I drive Jessica nuts is Get Up by Mary Mary. It talks about getting up. It's a new day, bringing your energy, something of gospel or some Kirk Franklin, and kind of getting the day going and making me realize it's another day, but I can do this,
I mean, you're definitely moving up with like Kirk Franklin. I definitely know. Goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he'll get you moving.
I'd have a playlist. I can't just choose one song. But the funny one that I'd have to say would be, I don't know if you're a fan of the Rocky movies, but Rocky IV, of course, predominantly everybody's favorite when he fights the Russian. The music, that instrumental music that's playing when Drago comes in, when they're in Russia at the end, as his music when he's coming into the ring, it's like, I'm digging this song, It's like that would be my entrance song.
Very nice.
That's the funny one, I guess.
Awesome.
I like it. Okay. You're planning the perfect community potluck. What's the one dish you're hoping someone brings?
Bob's beans.
Okay.
Only people from St. Paul's will understand. But man, that man makes the best baked beans. And I think it was last year or 2 years ago, Bob's wife, Judy, was finally, had Bob I have a handwritten copy of the recipe.
Very nice. I like that.
Okay.
Okay, Maya, what about you?
If I'm not bringing it, I'm hoping somebody else brings it, and it's a sweet potato casserole. I love making it. I won't say how Jessica reacted to the first time she ever tasted my sweet potato casserole, because not exactly PG friendly, so I will not do that. But let's just say she thoroughly enjoyed it. So, yes, definitely.
All right. What's one word that your friends would use to describe you?
Positive, for sure. Or optimistic.
Loyal and real.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And last question. What's something about you that most people would never guess?
I know, because most people can guess it.
This is not fun at all.
No,
I play
it's not.
the flute. I play an instrument. I play the flute, but that's not very interesting. Sorry, John.
I mean, I sing. I guess that's my instrument, but everybody knows that I sing. Yeah.
They would never guess after doing my ancestry that 3% British. I know, right? I even fell out of the chair on that one. It's like, now I know why I get along with them so well and why I love it when I get to go to London. And I'd always wondered why something, I would always enjoy this or enjoy this as far as, with anything British. And I'm like, okay. Do my ancestry, find out why.
Very interesting. Okay. All right. Well, I always ask every guest, and you know this, Maya, to leave our listeners with one final thought. So imagine someone listening today who's been carrying hurt, shame, or fear because of their experiences with faith. What would you want them to hear from your heart today?
So I was thinking about that because you had asked us, what to think about this. But I hope that my answer is hopeful. I had mentioned earlier that open and affirming churches are not outliers. We truly are not. The movement for inclusion and belonging is growing. It has roots, and there are like loads of resources out there. So I wanted to share what Reverend Dr. Derek Terry offered. He is the acting director of the Open and Affirming Coalition of the United Church of Christ. But I wanted people to know, not only do I echo this as a guest on this show. But this is not just me. This is many, many, many people who speak this truth. We will not be moved. We will be rooted in the truth that LGBTQ plus people are sacred, gifted, called, beloved, and necessary to the body of Christ. Amen.
I love that.
Yeah,
That is
wow.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Maya, what would you want them to hear from your
My
heart
Lord,
today?
how do I follow that? I mean, she summed it up perfectly. Done. I guess my final thoughts would be being as a part of the LGBTQ plus community. I probably have shared a lot of experiences that everyone out there has, the fear, the anger, the hurt. But just like, another day you get up, you rise up, and you continue to look. And I hope that this opens the eyes of people that still have that hurt and that fear, that, hey, someone, it's out there for me. I just have to go look for it. And, I hope it brings that positiveness to someone, knowing that they are welcome. There are plenty of places where they are welcome, and I hope that they find it.
I love that. Excuse me. So, Liz and Maya, thank you both for so much for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, and of course, your hearts today. I hope this conversation reminds our listeners that no one should ever have to choose between their faith and their authentic self. So thank you. And if today's episode, listeners, resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need this message. Sometimes, one conversation can change someone's perspective or even help them find a community where they finally feel like they belong. So be sure to subscribe to Empowered and Out, the career coaching podcast, wherever you listen or watch. We are on YouTube. And if you'd like to learn more about Reverend Liz, St. Paul's United Church of Christ, or Maya, you will find all their information in today's show notes. And remember, whether we're talking about your career, your confidence, or your community, you deserve to live authentically and be surrounded by people who see your worth. Share this episode with someone who may be questioning whether there's a place for them in a faith community. And of course, leave a review because it helps more people discover conversations like this. Until next time, keep showing up as your authentic self because the world needs exactly who you are.